One thing that everybody's going to hear is that the language is hard. And it is. There's like really no way around that. There's 19 cases for verbs. Or, I'm sorry, there's 19 cases for verbs. There's like 6 different conjugations. I read once in a book that there's 5,200 different derivatives of every verb, which really makes it a memorization game. I mean, it's pretty bad in that sense. But I remember in the airport, we were at baggage claim, and there was a mom talking to her little kid, and she was like, you know, babbling in baby talk, like the most simple Finnish, and I had no idea what she was saying. So just none. I was completely clueless. So the language is like the first weird thing about being in a foreign place. You walk down the street and nobody is speaking English, but people are just carrying on like everything's completely normal, and it's really, really weird. It's also weird leaving and getting back into English. I would say there's 3 big cities, especially for the missionaries. There's a bunch of missionaries in Helsinki and the surrounding areas. There's also a bunch of missionaries in Tampere and that surrounding area. And then in Turku, which is down on the southwestern coast. If you get the chance to go to Turku, it's really the nicest part of the country. It's old, so it's very Swedish. Really pretty countryside. You're right on the ocean. The city's big, but it's not that big. So looking back, Turku was really kind of a hot destination while I was there. That's where a lot of people wanted to go. Later on, they moved a bunch of missionaries up to Oulu, up almost at the Arctic Circle. And those were kind of the 4 cities where all the zones operated out of. And then you'd have missionaries kind of scattered all over from there. A lot of people work for Nokia. Obviously, the company Nokia is Finnish, especially the closer you get to Helsinki. So Espoo, that ward that I started in Espoo 2, it tended to be kind of the place where the Nokia members kind of congregated, as well as anybody that wasn't Finnish. You know, there's a handful of Americans that married Finnish women that are living there, a handful of British guys, and they all work kind of in the same ward. So the English was like just incredible in Espoo, and like I said, probably 40, maybe 50% of the members I felt like worked for Nokia. So that was kind of neat. The food is really plain and really boring. They don't really do anything other than use salt. Nothing's spicy. Nothing's sweet. We would kind of always make fun of that it was pretty bland. Somebody told me once that Finns love to live, he said, keskellä ei mitään, which, you know, when you learn Finnish means literally out in the middle of nowhere. So Finns are the most happy when they don't see their neighbors, when they don't have to see anybody else. You know, they tend to be kind of reserved people, which is really neat. And when you get to know them, it makes it really special. But a significant portion of the population, obviously there's a lot of people that live in Helsinki, you know, 1/5 of the population, but a huge majority of people too live in cities of just a few thousand people. And they live so far away from their neighbors that you'd never really see anybody else. You know, I remember going to a couple dinner appointments where we drove an hour and a half to get to somebody's random house that was out in the middle of nowhere. They love lakes. If you have a house on a lake, you've got everything in the world you could possibly want. Finland declared their independence on December 6th from Russia during World War I, and they're incredibly patriotic. I always thought that Americans were hands down the most patriotic people in the world. So I feel like we have a good reason to be. You know, we fought for our freedom, and then I met the Finns, and they are every bit as patriotic as Americans are. They declared their independence, and it lasted for about 12 years, and World War II broke out, and an agreement between Hitler and Stalin was that Stalin could have the Baltic, you know, Estonia, Finland, Lithuania, Latvia. And so Russia invaded all of those areas, and they took all of them over, you know, without a fight until they got to the Finnish border. And Finland fought them 3 different times. At one point, the Russian army was bigger than the population of Finland, and Finland won all 3 times. And it was miraculous. There's a lot of different things that went on that contributed to that. It was the coldest winter in recorded history in Europe. The Russian army, the tanks froze. The Finnish army was trained to fight on cross-country skis. But, you know, you had a small little army defeat the Russians, and they still remember it. And they're still very, very patriotic about it. They sing Oi Suomi, O Finland, which is kind of a national anthem of sorts. Most people recognize the tune because it's Be Still My Soul. It's actually a Finnish hymn. It's a Finnish song about Finland. And they sing it on Christmas during Independence Week. And it's funny because Finns don't show a lot of emotion. They don't really cry a lot, especially the older generation. I heard once that the word I love you really only gets said, you know, a handful of times in somebody's life. Like, you don't really tell somebody you love them unless you absolutely do, and it's a really, really special situation. So they're really reserved, but when they sing the national anthem, it was really funny because everybody would cry. So there'd be all these really rough and tough older guys in the wards that were just bawling. That was a pretty neat experience. After World War II, they were the only country that paid off their debts to the United States and other countries. Everybody else defaulted. And then they also had to pay Russia back for the wars that they fought as part of the stipulation. And it made the country super poor for a really long time. It made the people learn how to work very hard. And in my opinion, it made the Finns a little more conservative and a little different than most of their European counterparts. I remember talking to an older guy about his childhood, and he told me that one of the things that he remembered was being hungry and cold all the time. But anytime he'd see a train going towards Russia, it'd be full of wood and coal and food. And he remembered thinking, like, wow, that'd be really nice if we had wood for our fireplace, if we had coal for our fireplace, if we had food at night. Because that was just the situation that they lived in, where all the excess that they had was going to pay off other countries. It made a very unique people. It possibly is probably part of the reason why they tend to be a little reserved and a little coarse on the outside sometimes, is I think a lot of them still remember that. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir went to Finland to do a concert, and they sang Be Still My Soul, and it offended some of the members. They were really upset that the Americans would come. They love Americans, I shouldn't say it like that, but they were really upset that people would come and take the Finnish hymn that is so sacred to them and change the words and sing it to them. I thought that was really funny. The more they, hey, we can sing Be Still My Soul. And they're like, no, don't sing our hymn. Leave us alone. I mean, it's almost a national anthem to them. They do have a national anthem, but I almost felt like they liked Oi Suomi more. So I always thought that was really funny.